White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer says his faith not only influences his life, but also those around him. He sat down with me yesterday for a wide-ranging conversation, including a discussion about religious persecution.
So often when we talk about religious liberty, we're talking about it from abroad, allowing those people who don't live in a country as free as ours to express their faith. What we find and what we've seen in the last couple of weeks is that we still have problems in this country when it comes to allowing some people openly and freely express their own faith.
And what I've seen on other outlets is that there's this presupposition that if you voted for Donald Trump, somehow, some way, you do not have respect for people who of other faiths. And I think that it was quite telling that he dispelled that notion yesterday.
Right. And I think the thing that's interesting is that what we're seeing in the attacks on the Jewish faith are reprehensible because they're actions, right? These threats that they're calling in, that's unacceptable. That's reprehensible. These vandalism acts that are occurring at cemeteries. But we also have to, there's another piece to this, and I think it also affects some of us in the Christian faith, that when we feel as though we can't openly discuss areas of faith, we can't talk about being pro-life without being shunned, that is also an area of religious liberty. When you feel as though that kind of dialogue or expression of faith is not welcome, that's equally intolerable. The idea that you can't openly talk about how you're going to express your faith and live your life in accordance with it without being considered
other than,
or something's wrong with you.
Less than.
And there are things that we are taught in the Bible that may not be politically correct these days. But God tells us they are the right things to do. And for someone to come in and say that our faith or our belief or our practice is less than acceptable because they don't fit some societal norms or some liberal philosophy
of what's right
and wrong is equally problematic.
Right, I'm with you. I asked this question of anybody of a Catholic faith. In this town, as Mark Leibovich's book calls it, it is really hard to practice your faith, especially when you have a demanding job, especially when it is in politics where you have to make a lot of compromises in order to succeed. So my question to you, Sean, is how do you balance that? How do you balance not only family and faith and having time to go to Mass, but how do you balance keeping true to your faith in what is a very, how should I say, unfaithful town?
I think you do what you mentioned. You go to Mass. You ask for God to give you grace and when you're wrong and guidance to do what's right. And I think that's what you can do whether you're in Washington, D.C. or Washington State. I think you have to wake up every day and follow in the teachings of God, and that's what guides you. And either you're tempted all the time. We say it in the prayer of St. Michael. May God rebuke him and to cast into hell Satan and all of the other spirits who prowl about the world seeking the ruin of souls. I mean, that's what we're up against every day, and I don't think it matters where you are. There might be more of those evil spirits
of them right around the Capitol Hill.
but the fact of the matter is that the temptation and the evil spirits aren't limited to the 202 area code, and I think that we have to practice our faith and sometimes double down a little bit more depending on where we are. But I don't think we should kid ourselves that no matter where we are these days, that there are temptations, there are evil spirits, and I think we need to remain true to ourselves and true to God. And when we feel weak, we pray harder and ask the Lord to give us a greater set of strength and guidance and grace to do what's right. But I think sometimes it's actually those tougher times and more of those evil spirits that reinforce our faith because they challenge us and they remind us.
Without challenges, Mother Angelica always says, then what is the point of life? How does your faith grow?
Right, and I think that's the point, is that if it's easy, then that's not, because I think the other point, which is probably more so, is that how do we do what we're taught to do, which is to spread the word and to tell people that in a town like this to say, hey, that's inappropriate or that talk is wrong. And that's actually probably more challenging sometimes. It's not doing the right thing necessarily always for yourself. It's sharing that word with others and making sure that when we see something, we might intervene and say, hey, that's not appropriate, or to help steer the conversation towards something that's more Christ-like.
And more positive. I think that especially in your administration, you guys have a big target on your back.
They,
So
glad I'm facing forward.
yeah, that's right. That's right.